What is going on, everybody? It is Friday, April the 2nd, and that means it's time for my news radar. Perhaps I should start off this show by playing the funeral march because I've got some sad news for you. No, it's not that LG is shutting down their cell phone division because we already knew that, so maybe we are going to play the funeral march song like twice, once for LG and a second time for Cortana, because Microsoft is now officially shutting down the Cortana app on both Android and iOS. The statement they released is as follows. As we announced in July, we will soon be ending support for the Cortana app on Android and iOS as Cortana continues its evolution as a productivity assistant. As of March 31st, 2021, the Cortana content you created, such as reminders and lists, will no longer function in the Cortana mobile app, but can still be accessed through Cortana in Windows. Also, Cortana reminders, lists, and tasks are automatically synced to the Microsoft To Do app, which you can download to your phone for free. After March 31st, 2021, the Cortana mobile app will no longer be supported. So obviously, that is a couple days in the past. Cortana is no longer supported on mobile. And I think that this decision must truly just mean that Cortana just never could find a footing in the mobile space. And I think that it makes sense because Google Assistant, Siri, and even Alexa are so much more widely used. And when you're talking about these assistants, they can all do all the things that you want them to do. You know, when you're talking about making phone calls or looking things up, sending a text message, all of these functions work just fine. But then there's another aspect of this which kind of is against Cortana as well. In my home, I have a great many smart speakers, smart outlets, things like smart devices that are controlled for me using the Google Assistant because I have the home hub speakers strewn throughout the house. I'm never out of earshot of one of those speakers. So if I were to say, hey Google, turn off the studio lights, you will see pretty quickly that that is going to take place, and it works really well. And it works really well wherever I'm at in my house. Hey Google, turn the studio lights back on. And the reason I bring that up is because when you do that, whether it's Alexa with their smart stuff, or it's, Siri with all the Apple smart stuff, the speakers that they're bringing in and so forth, or it is the Google Assistant, you wind up getting into an ecosystem. So for me, I'm not going to switch from Google Assistant to Alexa because I'm already set up on the Google Assistant. The Google Assistant is on my phone and it's on my speakers and it turns off my lights. And when I tell it good night, my lights turn off and my fan turns on. And when I tell it good morning, my fan turns off and my lights turn on and it tells me the forecast in the morning. I'm used to the Assistant. It works really well for me. I'm not going to switch. Cortana couldn't get into that sort of flow. There were some attempted Cortana speakers, but they just didn't take off. The market was probably already too saturated and that niche was already filled. So part of the reason why they're killing Cortana is mentioned here at the bottom. The mobile version of the app is being killed due to a change in strategy. Cortana is being integrated within the Microsoft 365 suite of productivity apps, and of course, it will continue to serve as the default voice assistant for Windows 10. With the integration of Cortana with 365, the company has introduced personalized, actionable briefs in Outlook for Exchange users, and adding Cortana to the Teams mobile app to do things like manage calendars, email, and join meetings. So look, they know what they are. They know what Cortana's niche could be in its business and productivity specifically. They know that when you're going to just use an assistant to ask a question, send a text message, you've already got one on your phone that you're used to using and that works really well. So they're just not going to compete in that space any longer. Personally, I don't use Cortana even on my Windows desktop. I see no need to use it. I have a keyboard in front of me, so anything I need to search for or do anything that I might use Cortana for, I just use my keyboard. And that might be a lot because I'm just used to using my mouse and keyboard at my computer, whereas using voice to do things on my phone is something that I'm much more willing to do because I'm used to doing that. You talk to your phone, maybe that makes more sense. I don't know. I don't use Cortana. I know a lot of you guys probably did use Cortana a lot, in particular on Windows Phone, probably really liked it, so I'm terribly sorry. the mobile app is now dead. So quick update here, and I already mentioned it very briefly, so let's mention it briefly once more. LG will formally announce its exit from the smartphone business April 5th. We're not going to spend a long time on this. Boy, does that LG Velvet not look beautiful in that emerald green. It's a terrible shame that you won't be getting any more software updates from here on. That really sucks. They were unable to find a buyer, and evidently April 5th is the day. And if you're looking at your calendar, that is on Monday, which I kind of did mention in the last news radar. It's more confirmed now. Monday is the day. If you want to hear more about that situation, watch the news radar from Wednesday because I talked about it in much more depth there. But I did want to share this update that date has been confirmed. Also, it's kind of a slow news day. And last but not least, this is a bit of a news story, a bit of a debunk, and a bit of a rant probably percolating from deep within me. I've seen a headline on many different websites as well as on some YouTube videos like Tech Linked, and it's extremely misleading. So here's the headline. Google collects 20 times more telemetry from Android devices than Apple from iOS. Here's Ars Technica. By the way, that was the record. Here's Ars Technica. Android sends 20 times more data to Google than iOS sends to Apple. Of course, the idea here is that when you're using your Android device versus someone using an iPhone, Google is taking 20 times more of your data from you than Apple is taking from their user. And on its face, that sounds bad, right? That sounds like huge privacy concerns. However, this is based on a study, and the study is there for you to read, and the study is not saying what these headlines seem to be indicating. And again, if you go on YouTube and you look up Tech Linked, their last news video, they talk about this, and they go, oh, Google taking 20 times more data, and they do all that stupid shit. And it's not what it means, because no one is reading the study. And what I really find amusing about this is how quickly they depart from this headline and start letting you kind of understand that it's not quite what it seems like. So let's go to the first paragraph here. Whether you have an iPhone or an Android device, it's continuously sending data, including your location, phone number, and local network details to Apple or Google. I don't think that's a surprise to anyone. Of course it is. Now a researcher has provided a side-by-side comparison that suggests that while both iOS and Android collect handset data around the clock, even when devices are idle, just out of the box or after users have opted out, notice that we're saying here, both iOS and Android collect data around the clock even after users have opted out. The Google mobile OS collects about 20 times as much data as its Apple competitor. So they're both collecting data, even if you opt out, when it's idle, when you're using it, etc. But they're saying Google collects 20 times more. Well, what do we mean by more? Do we mean larger files? Or do we mean actual, like, more kinds of data? What do we mean when we say more? Let's continue. Both OSs also send data to Apple and Google when a user does simple things such as inserting a SIM, browsing the handset settings screen. Even when idle, each device connects to its backend server an average of every 4.5 minutes. iOS and Android both sending data every 4.5 minutes whenever you do pretty much anything. Here they say it's not just the OS that's sending data, it's pre-installed apps or services as well. So on iOS, Apple's sending data from Siri, Safari, and iCloud. Google, Android, is getting data from Chrome, YouTube, Google Docs, Safety Hub, Google Messenger, the clock, and the Google search bar. Those are all Google things. So of course they're getting data from you using the Google apps that are on your device. Again, we've not mentioned what the data is and what they're doing with it, just that it's data. This table shows a summary of handset data sent to Apple or Google when the user isn't logged in. And when you blow this up, I'm not going to go through them. I'm just going to point out where they differ. Android's not sending location data when you're not logged in. It's not sending your local IP address when it's not signed in. It's not sending Wi-Fi MAC addresses when you're not signed in, whereas Apple is. So even when you're not logged in on your iPhone, Apple is still getting a lot of your location data. Where Android stands out is in the amount of data it collects. A startup Android device sends Google about 1 megabyte of data compared to iOS sending 42 kilobytes. And that's where they get this figure of 20 times more data. Right? So 1 megabyte versus 42 kilobytes. So of course people are going to hear that and assume Google's taking way more data. But think about it like this. You see someone jump out of a window, out of your house. They've broken into your home, and now they're running away. They're scurrying off into the woods, and over their shoulder, they're carrying a large bag. And you think, wow, that bag is really big. That's a big bag full of things. Therefore, they've stolen valuable things. Well, it could be your trash bag, couldn't it? They could have stolen garbage. There could be no value. There could be no importance to what they've stolen. The file size doesn't tell you anything about the contents of the file. And this study doesn't go into that. I will link to it in the description. And there's a link to it on both of these websites. You can go read it yourself. What we actually need to know here, and what would be pertinent, would be to know iOS is collecting specifically this exact data and a list of that data, right? And then what are they using it for? Then Google Android is collecting this specific data and what are they using it for? Maybe you could add in how frequently, but it sounds like it's about the same frequency. But we need to know what the data is, what kind of data and where they differ, and then what the uses are. Simply knowing the file sizes tells you nothing. Let's jump to a quote from the study on this other website's version. The Irish researcher found that Apple tends to collect more information data types from the iOS devices. Google collected larger volume. What file format are they using? Is it possible that Apple is using a file format that is just more compressed and they're collecting the same things, but Apple's compressing it more and Google just isn't? We don't know that. We know that Apple is collecting more types of data. We know Google has a bigger bag. What does that tell you about the contents of the bag? Nothing. And I want to read Google's response to this study here as well. They said, quote, "We identified flaws in the researchers' methodology for measuring data volume and disagree with the paper's claims that Android device shares 20 times more data than an iPhone. According to our research, these findings are off by an order of magnitude, and we shared our methodology concerns with the researcher before publication. This research largely outlines how smartphones work. Modern cars regularly send basic data about vehicle components, their safety status, and service schedules to car manufacturers, and mobile phones work in a very similar way. This report details those communications, which helps ensure that iOS or Android software is up to date, services are working as intended, and that the phone is secure and running efficiently." So I'm not saying that Google isn't scraping all your data for nefarious reasons. I'm not saying that iOS is or isn't doing that either. I'm not making any statement because the research study doesn't make a statement about that either. But for me to write the headlines like this that you know are extraordinary and are honestly just clickbait, when the study doesn't indicate anything nefarious going on. So guys, that's all the news I have for you today. Be sure to check back every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for the next news radar. And until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.